So most people think the most difficult type of detailing is to take a car that's extremely neglected and, restore the finish to factory new. Or as I like to say, to take a diamond in the rough and turn it into a glistening gemstone. But in my opinion and experience, the most difficult thing to do is take something that already looks pretty good and take it to a higher level. And that's what I'm attempting to do with this 1968 Camaro resto rod. So there's some orange peel in the tops of the fenders. It's not bad on this one. I've already sanded and buffed the other side, but you can see the orange peel here. And if you're not sure what orange peel is, this is an orange, and it just has that's just something that's used to try to explain the surface texture we're trying to remove. So there's a pretty good orange peel. That paint should be completely flat for a show car. Anyway, I've got my head cam set up and ready to go. I've got all my tools and supplies ready to go. And I'm gonna go ahead and put my camera up on my head cam, and then I will show you the process that I'm gonna use to hand sand and flatten out the paint on the top of that fender, maximize the DOI, and just show you the process. So as I said in the intro, to me the hardest thing isn't taking a really neglected car and making it look new again. The hardest thing is to take something that actually looks pretty nice and then take it to a higher level. So this car came to me, it's a super high-end build, and the guy had the hood and the trunk lid repainted to put the stripes on there, and whoever painted it, actually I know the guy's name is Michael, he did a good job. He did a pretty good job painting the hood, but a couple things. One is the color match isn't quite right, but the owner doesn't want to repaint the rest of the car, so that's kind of out of the question. But when he looks at it, he sees a lot of orange peel on the other body panels as compared to the panels that were just painted. So he's asked me to make it right. Anyway, just to kind of go over this again, most people should never be sanding cars, okay? Whenever I sand cars, it's because they got a custom paint job, so the paint is thicker. Factory paint is, grab a Post-it note, hold it between your thumb and your finger. Factory paint's thinner than a Post-it note, so always got to remember, sanding takes off paint, compounding takes off paint, polishing takes off a little paint, and the last thing you want to do is turn your pad over after you're sanding and buffing and see the color of the base coat on the face of the pad, okay? That's a really bad sign. Anyway, so that's kind of the idea though, but this orange peel, like I said, is it's a way to describe texture. So this has texture, a lot of people call it orange peel. Just real quickly, this has what's called a fresh air grill, and there's no compound splatter in there, and I'm not gonna be the guy that adds any, so instead of taping it off, what I do is I just get a microfiber towel wet, so now it's heavy, so it has some weight, and it kind of stay there, and I'll just put the orange there too for effect. Okay, let me walk through all my supplies. So plenty of microfiber towels. These are from Autofiber. I forget what they sell these for. I think they sell them as a glass towel. I love them for a polish and wax towel, compound towel. And everybody says, well, Mike, won't the edges scratch the paint? Well, don't be stupid. You always grab the edges, you sandwich them between your thumb and your index finger, spread this out, scrunch up your fingers, and see how I've got the edges pulled up, then you wipe. There's no pressure back here, so you can figure out how to work for yourself, but I love these towels. Row point thickness gauge. Let's just do a couple paint thickness readings real quick. I got this set up for mils because I grew up in America and I kind of understand the whole mils thing. 637, this is telling me this isn't that paint. 720, that's kind of makes me nervous. 897, 8.97 mils. 9.92 mils, and usually for a custom paint job like this, before it's sanded, I like to see it in the 15 to 20 range. I mean, you can't get it too thick, but this has already been sanded once. This actually has been sanded by whoever probably originally built the car. And so I don't know how much clear coat I got left. And of course, a paint thickness gauge, even a quality one, it tells you total film build. So it isn't telling me how thick the clear coat is, it's telling me how thick the primer, any Bondo, the base coat, and the clear coat is. So all it's gonna do is do what I call become a big picture indicator. It's gonna tell me if the paint is thin or thick, and that'll help me to make the go or no go decision. Go, am I gonna do it? Or no go, no, I'm not gonna do it. That's how I use these. I've also got the detailometer here. Let me go ahead and turn this on. And I've already calibrated it. And I put some tape over here just because when you're doing this kind of stuff, you want to try to put the way I use this, I like to put it back in the same place. Let's wipe this off. And let's just do a little reading. So I'm going to just kind of line this up just generally. I'm not going to try to get it exact. I could be here all night long. Okay, measuring. And we've got a 91 for DOI. We got a haze of 0.5. We got a RIQ of 76. And these actually aren't bad numbers. The goal is to try to get these two really close to the same. This is low as you can. This is high as you can. So I'll come back and I'll do another measurement when I am done. That is if I remember. Okay, over here I've got my wool pad, rotary polisher. It's a Buff and Shine 8-inch wool cutting pad, fresh battery, spare battery, spur for cleaning. Okay, I've got the whole array of Dr. Beasley's NSP primers. This is way too aggressive for most people, and even for this car. It's really freaking aggressive. You can use it on car paint, but it should be custom paint like this, but you should know what you're getting into, or extremely oxidized gel coat. CoreCut will be more than enough to pull out 2000 grit sanding marks, and then I'm going to polish it with NSP 150. And I'm going to test out this yellow pad from Buff and Shine. If I need a different, more aggressive pad, I have the complete collection of EdgeGuard pads here. And something else I just wanted to share. This is usually sold as a tire cleaning brush, but I like it to clean my pads off as I work around the car, or when I go to the slop sink and wash them, to scrub them with a little bit of PRS pad renewing solution from GritGuard. And of course, it's always good to have a good swirl finder light. Okay, over here, I'm going to talk about how to do edge work. Most of the time when I do edge work, I use an 8-inch pad. You know, you better have some confidence in yourself. But of course, it's safer and easier to shrink the size of the tool down, shrink the size of the pads down, and then you have excellent control. I've got the Rupes Nano. I prefer these in long neck. With the extension. The extension, see, you got extension here, extensions are here. What the extension does is it gets the body, the tool, out of the way of the work so you can see what's going on at the surface level with the pad. And if you don't have one of these nifty little tools, look, you can put a 1-inch or a 2-inch, or 1-inch or a 2-inch backing plate. And I like a little 3-inch here, again, to get that way you get the tool of the body away from the paint so you can see what's going down here. But this is where you can come back and do your edge work. It's kind of heavy for that type of work, but you could do that. Then over here, of course, I got some sandpaper soaking. I've tested most of the papers on the market, but I keep coming back to Nikken, okay? The Nikken. This is a Japanese electronics grade paper. And I recently used the Eagle abrasive sandpapers, and actually they worked really good. The problem is the 2000 is so dark, once you get it wet, you can't read anything, so you got to make sure you use a dedicated bucket for each grit, or it just gets time consuming. This is something else I really like. You know, a lot of people know I worked for Meguiar's for I think 10 or 11 years. This is their E7200 backing pad. And it's flexible, but it has super flat surfaces, and it's fairly rigid. So it works great for leveling orange peel. You know, some people say, well, Mike, you should use a hard block. Well, I've got hard blocks over there, but the problem is if the person that did all the prep work didn't hard block it, and then you come back and hard block it, you're gonna be the guy that finds the high spots by going through. So it's better to stick with something flexible. Plus, you know, I've already told the owner, you know, there's only so much I can do to perfect this. I'll do the best I can. But I'm not going to shoot for 100% perfection. That's just chasing something that you can never realize. Anyway, then just real quickly, because I never know who's going to watch these, but in the sanding world, there's two ways to wrap your sandpaper. You can do the folding style, so you fold the paper in half, and then wrap it around, hold it, and sand, or the wrapping. And I'm kind of a wrapping guy, so I just like to wrap it around. It's really just personal preference. There's no really big deal about it. Just wrap around nice and tight. And of course, don't sand with the side with the edge on it. You sand with this side. And then there's some soap in here, and then I have a little bit of soapy water here. This, I thought I'd share this. Sometimes when I got to do curves, like this is a concave curve here, but it's not too bad. If it was, this is actually a pool noodle, like a floating noodle. Like you jump in the pool and you sit in a noodle and float around. I just cut these, and if I need it to be smaller, then I cut a section out and scrunch it up. But a lot of times when I got to get something done, I just use what I already have. Okay, so let me go over some sanding techniques. Put a little water down here. Now, anytime you're sanding, hand sanding, if you can, you want to try to tilt, I think the word is cant. It might be K-A-N-T, but you want to tilt it and run it back and forth this way, not perpendicular like this. And the reason why is because these hard edges here can tend to leave deeper scratches or ruts. So if you turn a little bit, you kind of avoid that. But if you're going to be standing next to an edge, then you can't really cant it or you'll end up standing on the edge. I forgot something, so forgive me, but let me go ahead and do something here before I start. Couple things, and all this stuff is stuff I teach in our classes. Anytime you're working on these older cars, they are not computer designed, and usually where you have two panels meet, there'll be a high side and a low side, so you just want to feel it. As I feel it, this is the high side, so if I come down here and I'm sanding and buffing and I'm not careful, I would hit this edge before this edge, and I could cause some damage. So there's a couple things you can do. First, you could pop the hood, okay? That would get this edge, or this panel, all the way out of the way. And I've got a big fuzzy blanket over there in my towel cabinet, and I could cover it up because this has a beautiful engine compartment. You don't want to get splatter, sanding slurry, compound splatter everywhere. But I don't know, I've been doing this a long time, so here's another way to tackle this, is just get some thin tape. Michael Cordoza gave this to me at Mobile Tech a couple years ago. Thanks, Mike. Such a consummate professional in nursing. And here's how you put tape down. You don't, here, you pull it out of the way so you can steer it. Now, I'm not having to steer because it's a straight line, but if I was trying to do a curve, I'd want to be able to steer it. So you pull this out and you steer it as you press down and affix that tape to wherever you want it to stick to. Here, I'll show you what you don't want to do. What you don't do is you don't apply tape like this. So pull it out, that way you can steer it and then run it down the edge you want to protect. And I'll still do everything I can to not hit the edge. And that'll include this edge too. Now if I feel this one here, it's higher here, but it's in the front of this, but it's actually, yeah, it's a little higher on here. So this side's a little higher too than the fender. And that's just kind of normal. I mean, sure, there's some great, custom car builders out there that get perfect panel alignment, the fit and finish. But it is pretty hard to get it perfect. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to put that on there to protect that edge. I guess I could hit this one up here. This is a little higher than this, so again, got to keep that in mind. I've got a saying, kind of goes like this. Well, it's actually not my saying, it's just an old saying. Here's your chance to be the hero or the zero. And I don't want to be the zero. I want to get this thing done, make it look good. This is actually pretty level right here. So if you wanted to, and I'm going to, just because so far in this car I've made 0 mistakes. I don't want to be making any right now. I'll just put a little piece of tape right down there. Just in case, but I should be okay. And I'm going to really try to stay away from the high point on these fenders. And one of the reasons why is I've sanded and buffed a ton of cars like this in my life, and this is the most common place you'll see a burn through, or worse, the person that does all the work before you, whoever detailed this before me, they will not have burnt through, but they'll leave the paint somewhere along here or somewhere on the car, what I like to call whisper thin. Whisper thin. Like really thin. You make one pass over it with an ultra fine cut polish and the softest pad on earth on a free spinning random ore polisher, and you run right through it. You burn right through it. So I'm not going to even worry about sanding on top or buffing on top of this. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Put a little soapy water down here again. Okay, so I kind of talked about how you want to cant it, but with this you can't. So the next thing I do is you got to figure out how to hold the sanding block, whatever block it is. So the way I do this is I take my thumb and my pinky finger, and I grip the side, and then I use these 3 fingers to push down on it. And of course you want to try to put equal weight over the entire surface so you have equal cutting and take advantage of 100% of the face of the sandpaper. But sometimes I can't do that, so I just do the best I can. So I put some weight on here, and I'm going to take my pinky, and as I'm sanding, I'm going to be feeling where I'm at in relationship to this edge, and that'll just help keep me from sanding right on top of the edge. Okay, and then here's another technique. Let me kind of warm this up here. But there's something to be said for inertia. So I've seen people that are scared and they sand like this, and that'd take you all day long. You'd never survive a body shop. But sometimes what helps is inertia. Inertia is the energy from, if I move my hand forward, because I'm moving it forward, it's easy to maintain that forward action. And same thing for reverse. So you want to get the sanding pad going. Let inertia help you. And when you're first starting out on a car you've never sanded before, it's always a good idea to just make like 8 or 10 strokes and then wipe off and inspect. And the reason you want to do that is because it will give you an idea of if the paint is hard or soft. I just made like 8 back and forth strokes right here, and I've already leveled the orange peel here. There's still some orange peel up here. But what that tells me is this paint is not hard. It's not soft, but if we looked at hard, medium, and soft, I would put this on the soft side of medium. And for that reason, I just want to be super careful. Okay, so that's how I would tackle that. Let me come down here and just kind of finish this one little section here. And when you're sanding, you'll see a white liquid on the surface. See it right here? That's called your sanding slurry. So anytime you sand a clear coat, when you scratch something, like if you've ever seen a scratch in glass, it's kind of opaque, it's whitish. When you sand something clear, it turns white. So that's called your sanding slurry. Now, if in the old days when we had nothing but single stage paints, if you sanded a red car, the slurry would be red, and they would call that color sanding. Nowadays, I think we just call it wet sanding, but that's just kind of where that term came from. Okay, so let me just kind of inspect that real quick. Whoever sanded this before, they actually flattened out most of this pretty good, not perfect. As you get closer to this edge and run down here, that's when the orange peel really kicks up. So I don't need to do a ton of sanding up here. And like I said, I don't want to be the zero. Now, I need to come up here and sand this gentle concave curve here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually push pretty hard on the edge. This part here won't be doing much work at all. It's mostly going to be right up in here. And then I want to share a technique with you. Okay, so here I am sanding. Now I'm going to start to move my sanding backing pad this way. And as I do it, I'm just going to go a little bit at a time. So I keep what's called a nice tight sanding mark pattern. See how I'm just kind of moving over just a little bit. What you don't want to do is make big patterns. I call those making M's or W's. You don't want to do that. You want to have a nice tight sanding pattern. And the goal when sanding, if possible, is to leave a finish that doesn't look scoured or scratched, just looks dull. And blowing just helps to dry the moisture off there so you can see your progress. And as you can see, most of this is pretty good. I can take this just a little bit further, and then I can come back in here and get this. And of course, as I sit here and make this video, I will do that. Now, okay, now I'm going to come and tackle this area and kind of tie it into this area. And first I need to kind of get this edge here. You know, if you ever want to become really good at sanding, especially if you're a young guy, here's what you do. You go get a job at your local body shop. Okay, now same thing. I'm going to use the side of my thumb to feel this raised body line as I'm holding this so I can feel where that's at so I don't run over the body line. Okay. I'm probably staying about I don't know, 1/8 of an inch away. I got confidence, I can get pretty close. There is a technique called the rule of thumb. In fact, if you go to Google and type in the rule of thumb and add Mike Phillips, you'll pull my article up on this. And what that article says is, and it's what I teach in my classes, if you're new to sanding, stay about a thumbnail distance, because wherever I go, I take my thumb with me so I can use it for a measuring device. Stay about a thumbnail distance away from all your edges and raised body lines. And the reason for that is because when you sand on these things, you have to come back and compound, usually with a wool pad on a rotary, and it's going to be really easy to sand and then buff through the paint. So if you just stay a little ways away from it, you don't got to worry about it. Now, of course, all the experts say, well, gee, Mike, won't there be orange peel right next to the body line? Well, yes, there will be. In fact, this is an example. There's more orange peel next to this body line than in the center here. And that's because in order to sand right up to an edge, you have to factor in the amount of time it's going to take to come back and pull out your sanding marks. And it's a long time. Look at every edge on this car, every edge and every raised body line. I mean, you could grab a micro tool like this, put a wool pad in, go along there, but I mean, if it's your own car, my gosh, go ahead and do it. You got all the time in the world. Do it in your garage. You got, you know, it's your project. But if you're doing this for money or in a shop, I mean, you got to get done. You got to get done so you can go home at some point, give the car back to the owner. Okay. So anyway, I teach what's called the rule of thumb. And hokey as it may be, here's what I know. You know, I've been detailing cars since the late 70s and really got into it into the 80s, so a long time. And when I walk around at car shows and look at a lot of cars, even like this, like show cars, I'll look really carefully and I'll see perfectly glass, smooth, 100% DOI paint. And then as soon as you start getting up to the edges, you see that orange peel kick back in. And what that does is makes me feel vindicated, because what that means is not only do I not have enough time to sand up to the edge and then buff out all my sanding works around all the edges, most other people in the world don't either. Unless you're like Jason Kilmer, you know, doing something really fancy, spending 100 hours on it. Okay, so this is dried. This looks pretty good. There's a little bit of peel right here and right here. So I just come back in and just do a little bit of light sanding. Come up here and hit that. And the reason you want to do that is just so when you do the buff out, you have a uniform appearance. I always talk about UMR. UMR. What is UMR? UMR stands for Uniform Material Removal. And what that means is you want to take off the same amount of material here, 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 here. You want to do it evenly. And that way, at the end of the day, or when you finish the final step and you wipe off the coating or the wax, whatever you put on there, and you stand back, it has a uniform appearance. And that's kind of what it's about. So UMR, Uniform Material Removal. And remember, some of the paint thickness gauge readings I got in this area here were in the 6 and 7 and 8 range. So again, like my old mentor used to tell me, here's your chance to be the hero or the zero. And as far as size goes, you know, this is the top of a fender, so I'm working on a long linear fender. But if I were working out in the middle of the hood, usually you tackle a section about this big. Okay, it doesn't matter if you're big and strong and you could sand the whole hood. You want to sand an area you can manage. And managing it means being able to push down the same amount of pressure here, which is right underneath my body, as I do out here, because the further away your arm gets from your body, it takes more muscle and control to push down the same amount as you can right here, where you can just shove down because you're right below your shoulder and all those muscles. Okay, looking good. But yeah, don't tackle too big of an area. And you know, if you are new to this, another way to get some practice is to either go to a salvage yard and purchase an old, you know, body panel, a hood, a trunk lid, door, tailgate off a wrecked car, and practice on that. That in most cases will be factory clear, so it'll be very thin, so you might not be able to do a whole lot of training on it, but it'll get you started. There's another thing you can do. This is really bad. Don't tell anybody you got this from me, but we used to do this at Meguiar's, and I know other professionals in the industry that do this, but you just call up your local car rental agency and you go rent a passenger car and, hey, sand it. I mean, get a cheap Econobox for the weekend. Won't cost you much. It'll have a lot of paint on it, and then you can just practice all weekend long on it and take it back. Okay, a little more up here. And one of the reasons I like dry sanding is because with dry sanding, you don't got to wait for that water to evaporate to gauge your progress. You can just wipe off and look at it, and you can tell if you can move on to new territory or if you need to spend some more time sanding in that area. Okay, see, as I move across there, a nice tight pattern. Just moving over a little bit at a time. I already did that top of the fender there a night ago when I was testing my head cam, and I sent the before and after pictures to the owner, and he was elated. So I know what it'll take to make him happy. I don't got to get it perfect. I just got to get it good. There are also a lot of swirls and scratches in the old paint, so of course that's not going to look good compared to the new paint. So I will polish out every body panel on this and get it right, and then I will ceramic coat it. And this is a garage queen, obviously, and the owner told me he never drives this in the rain. Now in Florida, that's a lofty goal, but a lot of times you can be at a car show, forecast is sun, and all of a sudden, boom, you know, it's raining. So, get a fresh towel. Looking good, looking good. Okay, and then if the camera picks this up, so here's flat. Then as you come down, you can kind of see shiny paint and dull paint, and it's speckled or spotted. So that's the hills and valleys. So Orange Pill is a series of hills and valleys. And what you're trying to do when you sand is you're trying to knock down all the high points till they're level with the lowest points. And what this does is it actually acts to flatten out the paint. And the reason you want to flatten out the paint is because the flatter the paint, the sharper the reflections. So there's a term in the industry called DOI, distinction of image. And a mirror is 100% DOI. If you look in a mirror, it reflects your face, whether you want to see it or not, perfectly back at you. And the flatter you can get the paint, the higher you can get the DOI. So that's why people sand paint. And again, as I kind of said at the beginning of this video, none of us should be sanding factory paint, because factory paint is about as thin or thinner than your average Post-it note. And again, like I mentioned earlier, after you sand, you've got to compound and you've got to polish. Show car at work, I might do 3 steps, but this I'll probably just do 2, compound and polish. Like I said, I've already polished a bunch of this paint. It polishes, whatever this paint is, it polishes really nice. But sanding takes off paint, compounding takes off paint, polishing takes off a little paint, and pretty soon you're gonna see the color of the base coat on your buffing pad. And I have a saying for that. It goes like this. I think I got an article somewhere, but here's the quote by Mike Phillips. Words cannot describe the heart-sinking feeling that overcomes you when you discover you've sanded through some other dude's paint on their street rod or muscle car like this one. And it's true. I mean, if something bad goes wrong here and I'm buffing and I start seeing red paint, I'm going to feel really bad. Just like I said, it's going to overcome me. I'm going to feel horrible. Okay, so I'll let that dry a little bit and come back and look at it. I'm going to come down here. And now we got a couple of different curves going on here. So there's actually a concave curve right here. So one of the things I like to do for that is I just take and I kind of bend this to give it a natural bend. And I put most of the pressure in the middle, not on the outer edges, so it flexes to keep that sanding pad flat into that concave curve. Okay, looking good. Looking good. Okay. And then bring my cart down here. Love these carts. Universal Detailing Cart by EdgeGuard. Has a hole in the bucket. That's where I put my bucket when I'm washing cars or when I'm sanding full-on projects. This is just a little project, but if this was a full hand wet sand, I would take this piece of board out of here, expose the hole, and put a 5-gallon bucket with all my sandpapers, just because then I have plenty of water, sandpaper, and it fits in the hole. So again, here, if you look, I'm just moving over just a little bit at a time. Okay, and then I'll knock out this side, then start to move over. And get the very front portion of this top of the fender. Okay, let's check that out. And you can see the slurry. You see that slurry there? Oh, you know, I actually enjoy this. It's kind of relaxing. I know my wife would rather have me at home. She made banana bread today. I want to be there. I want to eat it. But I actually like doing this kind of stuff. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and I told him there was 2 kinds of satisfaction. There's probably more, but here's 2 kinds. So if you're into detailing like me, it's very rewarding to take a super neglected, swirled out, hacked up car finish and really make it look awesome. That's rewarding. But there's another part that I always find even more rewarding, and got some orange peel up here. And that's in my life, you know, I've met a lot of guys with cars like this, and they're very apprehensive to let some stranger do what I'm doing, sand and buff on it. I mean, there's a lot of money in this car, and repainting it would be very expensive. So it's very rewarding when somehow fate puts you, and in this example, the owner of this car, puts you together, and he wants it to look perfect. He doesn't know who to trust. At some point, he's gonna go, okay, I'm gonna give you a shot. And if you can get it right, you just fulfilled his dreams, and that's very rewarding to me also. This gentleman got my name from another local street rod guy here in town, who just recommended me and said I use high quality products, you know, like the Nikken sandpaper. I have good tools, I've got great pads, and I use great abrasive technology. Okay, so at this point, you really want to inspect it. You want to make sure you're happy with it, because I want to come back and hit this, because it's really a pain to have to come back and re-sand. So you really want to nail each step perfectly. Okay, so I got a little bit right there. That's where I had a problem before, so I'm going to put a little more pressure on there. That should get it. And then right there. A little bit right there. Okay. I'm calling that good. I'm calling that good. So a good friend of mine, Paul Grasso, owns Grasso Garage Street Rod Shop here in Stuart, Florida. And he shared something with me one time. Actually, it was after I machine sanded with the Rotary polisher the back window on a 1970 Plymouth Superbird. There were no more back windows in existence, at least not OEM. And this thing was all scratched up. And we sanded it down starting with 180 grit, finished out at 4,000, polished it to perfection. It went in the car. It's absolutely beautiful restoration. But what Paul said through this process is the difference between a pro and a hack, a pro knows when to stop. I'm stopping. So, anytime you're going to use a rotary, better have a spur. And even though I know this pad's clean, set the back of this on your knee and then just run this in and out. You just want to make sure it's clean. I have experienced a really bad thing where at one point something sharp was in my pad, and as I buffed it, put arc scratches everywhere, and then I had to buff those out. So keep your pads clean. Okay, so we got the CoreCut plus CoreCut 150, 95, 45. I'm confident CoreCut will handle this. Okay. And yeah, I know a lot of people say, gee, Mike, you could take that out with an orbital. Yeah, I could. Take forever. Okay. Usually what I like to do is lock these power lock buttons, you know, pull the trigger in, hit the power lock button right here, lock it into place, then move my hand back here to support the weight of the battery. The other hand up here. I've got a good grip on this. I've got great leverage over the tool, so I can really have a good firm grip and manage this tool. So I'm going to come down here just at a slow speed and just kind of grab that product and spread it out a little bit. Notice I didn't throw in anywhere. And at this point, all these fibers are pretty dry, so I don't want to get in there and do too much buffing so I kind of get this pad warmed up. And I'm doing that just by doing some slow buffing here. Okay, and this is no red paint. That's a good sign. This is important. What you see here, this film, this is two things. It's abrasive technology and it's lubrication. And you need a little bit of both in order to buff out paint and make it look beautiful. Okay, so now that I've warmed it up, just a thin little, come out of there, CoreCut. I want to get CoreCut Plus, I'll be hurting. Okay. And then I'm just going to take and finger paint some of this up here. I never waste product, so I might as well just put that on the pad. Now I'm going to come up here and I've locked it into place. And I'm just going to start buffing. And I'm going to use overhead light. And what you see me do is you see me go forward and then back, and then forward and back. And what I'm doing is I'm looking to see if I've removed the sanding marks in that area. And if I have, when I pull back, they're gone. Then I move on to new territory. So using a rotary is very different then using an orbital. With an orbital, you want to dial in a test spot. So say you're buffing out a swirled out car, a little bit of lubrication and abrasive technology. Say you're buffing out a swirled out car, and say you're going to use, let's just pick on Porter cable. I really like the Porter cable. Say you're going to use a Porter cable to remove all the swirls and scratches. So when you're first starting out, you do what's called a test spot. So you take the pad, the product, the tool, and your technique, and you test one little spot, about the size of a microfiber towel. That looks good. And you make sure the products you think are gonna work do in fact work. And at some point you need to count either seconds, how many seconds did I buff that section, or you need to count passes. So like, say I was buffing a section right here, going over it this way, one, that's one section pass, this way, that's 2, 3, 4, but you want to count how many times did I have to do a section pass, so when I wipe off it looks good and I can move on to a new section. Or time it. You know, a lot of people like to time it. For me, I don't like to time it because that means for the rest of the car I got to count in my head, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, and that's just too much mental work. What's easier is to just go ahead and count your section passes. Then once you dial in your test spot, then you just duplicate that same process over the rest of the car. And assuming that car has all the same paint on it, what you did on the hood or the trunk lid should work over the rest of the car. Usually the hood, the horizontal surfaces, the hood, truck, and the roof have the worst amount of damage to them just because they take the full brunt of the sun and Mother Nature. And by Mother Nature, you know, I mean inclement weather, wet weather. And water is a universal solvent. And there's some sanding marks right along here. And so let me just demonstrate, this is how you would edge a panel. Let's grab my little Rupes long neck. Put a little microfiber cutting pad on here. And then grab some CoreCut. And I'm done buffing up here, but I'm gonna just put some product up there to draw from, okay? And then you could take this and then just run your finger like that across here. So now again, I repeat myself a lot to try to teach people things. But now I've got two things here, abrasive technology and lubrication. Fire this up, set on the low speed setting. And this is how you would do edge work. You would come in here, and I got such amazing control over this tiny little tool, this tiny little pad. It's not going to get away from me. And I can just come in here and work all the sanding marks out by those edges. Make sure whenever you're doing this, don't stay in one place too long because you create a lot of heat with the rotary, big pad or little pad, and you'll end up twisting the paint or burning the paint. You don't want to do that. Okay, so that's one way to do it. That's how you would edge a panel using a micro tool. But most of the time, I just like to use the tool that's already in my hand, so I do all my edge work with an 8-inch pad. And, you know, just gotta learn the way of the rotary. So I'm gonna come up here. I'm just gonna kind of dance over that edge. I'm not gonna hit it real hard. Then, like I said before, I'm just gonna kind of creep along. So I'm pulling back, I'm looking, and once I see the sanding marks are gone, I move on to new territories. And I started back here and came this way because the pad's spinning this way, so as I hit this part, it'll pull it into itself. Instead of, if I come this way and hit it, it's gonna throw it all over me. I don't know if that made sense, but when you're using a rotary, you have to learn the dynamics between pad rotation and product pickup and product swing. What you want is product pickup. What you don't want is product swing. Okay, that is good enough. Okay, so I've got to there. I need to come up here and get sanding marks out there. Come out of there. Okay, here's another technique. This is called buffing off an edge. Okay, so you look at this thing, it's spinning this way. So coming up off this edge, I'd want to be using this side of the polisher because the pad's spinning off of it. If I was buffing this panel right here and I came down this way, this is coming into it, it'd grab this raised body line and yank the polisher. Same thing here. As I'm buffing off this top of this panel. I want this pad rotating the way that it's spinning off, not digging in. So I'm going to turn my body around here just a little bit. Now I'm buffing off the edge. I think I got an article on this somewhere. You can usually find a lot of my articles by typing in a few keywords and then adding my name, Mike Phillips. And most of them are on the AutoGeekOnline.net discussion forum. But nowadays you'll find a lot of my latest articles up on the Dr. Beasley's blog. So go to drbeasleys.com, and up on the top of the web page you'll see a text link that says blog, and click on it, and there's hundreds of articles. So you kind of have to scroll through till you find what you're looking for. Or just shoot me a text or an email and I'll send you the link for whatever topic you're looking for. I'm pretty good at that. I remember everything's at. Anyway, that's that back and forth. That I call that the herky-jerky movement because I'm kind of going back and forth. Okay, let's come down here. Continue working along the inside body edge between the fender and the hood. It's more than enough product, so I'm going to put some down here. Some right there. Remember as a kid when you got to go to school and finger paint? Okay. Okay, again, I'm going to come at it this way because this pad's spinning this way, so when it hits this spark, it's going to pull it into itself. If I come this way, it's going to lift it up into my face. I'm kind of new to the head cam. But if you look, if this is picking this up, sanding marks are gone, it's very clear. If I come up here, I start to see the sanding marks. So now I'm just going to keep moving forward. No pressure, no pressure. See that? I'm using this hand just to guide it. Let the compound, let the fibers of the wool pad and the spinning action do the work for me. Okay, I need some more product. And if you find this interesting, we teach this here in Stuart, Florida. I got a class coming up in September. I know this video, when I say stuff like that, it becomes dated. But I have always got a class. I love teaching people how to do this stuff. And I bring in lots of cool cars just like you see here to work on, so people like that part about it. I have probably close to 50,000 tools here. I'll walk back there and show you. Most of the brands you can name, and I'm adding more to our inventory just so if someone says, hey Mike, what about that DeWalt cordless? Well, I'll have one here and you can play with it. That way, when you take one of our classes, you get to do what we call try before you buy. You know, try our tools out. We don't sell them. I don't care what tool you buy. Okay, that all looks pretty good. So now I need to come down and get this. And this is, again, I want to be buffing off the edge, not buffing into it. This head cam works out. Yancey just lost his job. Okay, need a little more lubrication and abrasive technology. And if this video is too long for you, it's okay. Probably means you weren't really interested anyway. And if you find it interesting, I'll try to keep it interesting so you stay all the way to the end. And most of all, you should stay at the end so you can see when I turn this pad over if there's any red paint on it, or the polishing pad actually. That'll be the final test. Okay, so I've removed all the sanding marks along here, down here. Now I just need to get this little concave sloped area here. Let's see. First I'm going to take and just spread that out a little bit more. Okay, come in. And again, you want to be really careful when you're buffing some other dude's work. He may have left this paint right here on the top of the fender body line, whisper thin. Okay, no red paint. So let's go ahead and wipe this off and inspect. And kind of like I was saying with the sanding step, at this point, you really want to get the sanding marks removed. Can you get them out when you go to the next step? Yeah, it depends on the paint and the depth of the scratch, how good you are. My good friend Joe Fernandez, one time we were talking about metal polishing. Actually, I've got a really nice blog article on how to remove oxidation on aluminum, and for that article I'm using what's called a AeroVault car hauler, which is like a $40,000 car hauler. And I was talking to him about this, and he says, you know, because he does a lot of aluminum. There's some sanding marks right there. He does a lot of aluminum sanding and polishing, and what he told me is, you know, how paint is kind of forgiving. So like if you don't get the sanding marks out or the swirls and scratches with the first step, a lot of times you can get it with the next step. He says aluminum's not like that. So, and I've sanded down a couple of big aluminum projects like pontoon boats. And the thing about materials that aren't forgiving, what that means is every step you do, you got to completely eliminate whatever you're trying to remove in the first step, because aluminum is not forgiving, just like glass is not forgiving. Anyway, okay, so let me grab this. And what I like to do is, when I'm looking at this, is just come back by, and it's, I don't know if the camera can see it, right there, there's some sanding marks. And that's kind of a tricky area to buff. Let's see, I'm walking up, I'm looking along all these edges. So when I teach the classes here, our 2-day class, the second day includes sanding a car like this. Pretty cool, huh? And sanding marks right there. And I turn the class, you know, I teach everybody how to sand, and then I turn them loose. Usually we start out wet sanding, then we go to machine sanding. All along here, some sanding marks. And this is kind of what I find. After the students work over the car, everything looks good in the easy to buff areas, but along all the raised body lines and the edges, there's still sanding marks. So at some point, I just grab the rotary and take over, and I pull them all out. So we can move to the next step, which would be using a foam pad on an orbital to remove the holograms. Okay. It's hard to get the light. There we go. Most of the time on this tool, I'll run this on speed setting 3. But when I'm doing intricate work like this, I stick around the 1 setting, which is like 900 RPM. What I'm doing is I'm kind of leaning over the car so I can put an overhead light right down along that edge so I can see my progress. No red paint. Trust me, that is a dangerous spot. Not just here, but any place there's a raised body line. This is kind of tricky because this is right next to this panel I put the tape on. Let me see if I can come down here and do my edge work with an 8-inch pad. Okay. Inspect a second time, no red paint. And I'm getting dust and stuff all over the rest of the adjacent panels here, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to come back and buff those out anyway. But I want to knock out the sanding work first. I always do the hardest things first. Save the easy stuff for last. Okay, I'm just kind of going through and looking right here, all the sanding marks are gone. You can see a little bit of peel, just about a 1/4 inch away from that edge. And that's me just not buying this guy a paint job. Let's come around this way and look. Okay. I'm following along the edge here. And I'm looking for sanding marks, and usually it'll kind of show up as a dull appearance. Okay, good. And I'll just kind of wipe some of the dust and splatter off. Next where I'm going to buff. I don't want to drag any CoreCut into my polishing process. Yeah, that looks good to me. Okay, so next up, I need to pull the holograms out. In fact, let me show you what holograms are. I'm sure you know, but kind of hard to see on a curved panel. But anytime you buff with the rotary pad and a rotary polisher and a wool pad, the rotary polisher, because it's spinning in a single direction, it'll leave a scratch pattern that we call holograms. And it's important to know that because I see people talk about micromarring. So they're using an orbital polisher and they're seeing a haze or a shadow pattern on the paint, and they'll call that holograms. So that's not holograms. That's either called micromarring or pad haze, or some people call it shadow patterns or shadow effect. And it's basically, you can kind of see where you move the polisher back and forth with an orbital. And usually what's causing that micromarring is one of two things, either the abrasive technology or the pad or both. Okay, so see how I just kind of put some on the edges here? I need some lubrication there because I am going to be doing some edge work with this. And let me just show you how you go ahead. Oops, put it over here. So I was doing that by hand, but here's another way to do that. I like to show lots of technique. So what I want to do is I want to get some product on this edge so I don't have dry foam coming down, spinning on paint, possibly causing damage. So I'm just going to take and I'm tilting this so you can see it. I'm tilting it like that, okay? Now I'm just going to bring the speed up a little bit. I'm just going to walk this into that little strip of product I put down, just like that. And as you can see, it lubricated and put abrasives on the edge for me. I'll grab this and come up here. And this is one of the reasons I really like a gear-driven tool. This is the Super Beast. So this is the modern version of the original Beast. And it doesn't have the same OPM or RPM, so it's not as powerful, but it is a lot smoother. It's also lighter, quieter, and it runs cooler. So there's some advantages, but there's also some drawbacks. And if you really want one of the original Beasts, they discontinued them, so you better get one while you can. And I'd recommend getting some spare backing plates, because the backing plate Velcro is a wear item, it wears out. Okay. I'm going to share a technique with you here in a second, but just real quick, let me kind of wipe off and inspect, make sure we're getting the holograms out with a yellow polishing pad in NSP 150. And it's close, but it's definitely not perfect. So I'm going to switch over to a more aggressive pad. And we'll jump over here. This is the Blueberry, the EdgeGuard. And the reason I like these is it's got this tapered design, just like this. See how this comes down and it's cut out back here? What that does is when you go up on edge, the foam will twist backwards, because if you have a cylindrical pad and you go up on edge, the foam twists inwards, and then you expose the backing plate to the paint you're buffing out. That's really dangerous. I'm going to lubricate the edge again. Oh, this is a much sharper pad. They call this heavy polishing. It's a really nice foam formula from Buff and Shine. And on harder paints, you can actually finish out with it, and on softer paints, it'll probably be micromarring, so you always want to do a test spot. So I just want some product on there. Now I'm going to put some on the edge like I did before. Just like that, see that? And I'm going to move this down there. Okay. Take two. But the reason I like a gear-driven tool is because right now I want to pull the sanding marks off the edge there. So I want to tilt this and go up on edge. And with the free spinning polisher, the pad would quit rotating. You know, in some cases it might reverse rotate, and I've documented that in a couple books I wrote. But I still don't want to wait around for that. I want to get in there and get it over with. And I always tell people to go from start to finish and detail a car. It takes a long time. You know, you start out in the morning watching the wheels and tires. Finally get to where you're done. For most people, to start and finish a passenger car, it's an all-day process. So that's why I don't mess around too much with free spinning random orbital polishers. I like them, I just don't use them. And I see they're real popular with most of the world. One of the reasons they're popular is because they're smooth, okay? And by that I mean, as I go up on edge, because this is gear driven, I can feel it kind of pulling me. Well, that pulling, another way to think of that is power. This tool has a lot of power. Now a free spinning polisher, it won't pull you. Instead, the pad will slip. The spindle will not rotate. That causes the pad to slip. And the practical dynamic of that is now the tool feels very smooth. So people like the smoothness, but they're sacrificing power. And I know there's a lot of guys out there that love the small block Chevy. I'm kind of a big block Chevy fan. I always kind of think, you know, when you talk about power, like, you got a 67 Corvette, I think it'd be more fun to say, yeah, I got a 67 Corvette with a 427 big block, versus, yeah, I got a 67 Corvette with a 350 small block. You know, so in the real world, most guys like lots of power. But when it comes to their tool choice, oh, I want something smooth. Okay, well, add another hour or two to the buff out process. It's better than me, I'm going home. Okay, so this is something I wanted to share. This is a 7-inch buff and shine pad, so 7-inch diameter across here. It might be like 6.5, but you get the idea. This top of this panel is wider than 7 inches or smaller. So if I try to hold this pad flat, and you can see that, I'm going to be buffing on both the inside fender edge and the raised body line. So some people would say, well, go get a different tool with a different backing plate and thus a different size pad. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to tilt this. And what that's going to do, instead of this portion of the pad hitting the paint, I'm going to shrink it down to just about this portion. And kind of at a tilt, I can go through and do everything with the same tool that's already in my hand versus switching to another tool. I could switch to another tool, got tons of them, got lots of backing plates. They make a 4-inch backing plate for this tool. But what I do is I just learn to make the tool do what I need it to do. And that speeds up the process because I'm not stopping and grabbing a different tool, different pad, different backing plate. Anyway, that's how I look at it. And the really big picture goal, you know, for me personally is I like to go fast, but I like to keep my quality high. So I don't want to go fast and turn out hack work. I just want to go fast because I know the whole process in general just takes a long time. That's probably too much product, but let me go ahead and work that in a little bit. Right down that edge. Boom. Like a surgeon. Okay, now I need to get this side. Okay, time to wipe off and inspect. I think I got a little, whoops, doggone it. Hope I didn't mess up the camera alignment. Shouldn't have. That blueberry pad, I think it did a much faster job of removing the holograms there. This is a head cam I built myself, and I'm kind of a one-man show down here, so I don't always have a camera guy. So I was trying to think, how can I capture some of the stuff I do down here without setting a tripod up and having a camera, you know, that's like 8 feet away and you can't see what's going on. So I came up with this idea, and this is my test, seeing how this works. Oh, that looks good. That looks good. Okay, and then, yeah, it looks really good. This has actually got a nicer finish than that now. Then the next thing I would do is, that does look good, but I'd like to take it to a little higher level. This is an EdgeGuard. It's just a white foam polishing pad. See how these come with a 6-inch backing plate that perfectly fits inside there. The original Beast and the Harbor Freight copy, the Hercules forced rotation dual action polisher, they both have a 5.5-inch backing plate. And to be honest, for the edge there, that was NSP 95, by the way. That, by the way, is left over from my last class. My class used a one-step AIO on that. It came in here completely swirled out. And you can see a full write-up plus all the before and after pictures for that car up on the Dr. Beasley's blog. I try to document all my classes. Okay, so, and mostly that blueberry pad being that it has a little sharpness to it, it's not going to leave as nice a finish as a less aggressive pad and a less aggressive product. So that's why I was saying usually for show car work, I'll end up doing 3 machine polishing steps besides any sanding work and besides the coating. One, the initial cut to remove the sanding marks, the next cut to remove the holograms, and then the third cut or the third polish would be to really just perfect the paint. Remove all the micro marring left by that aggressive foam formula, and that's got some sharpness to it, and it shows up in the paint. And again, I'll see if I can show you this. To buff out that edge, I'm tilting it like this. And what that does, instead of having this entire face hitting this and that, I've shrunk the footprint down to a smaller size. So that's, you might not be able to see I'm doing that, but I am doing it. And before I move on, the reason I like these EdgeGuard pads again, so this will flex back instead of mushrooming or twisting in. And that would be for doing stuff like this. So going up on edge. And not having that twist in and expose the backing plate. Oh crap, I hit the cam again. Well, I hope you can all see what I'm doing. Since this is my first time, I keep forgetting that camera's up there. Okay. So, just one thing I thought I'd mention here, you know, one thing I love about social media is it brings out all the experts, and some experts would probably watch me do this, and then here's what they say. Mike, you're doing that wrong. So maybe I am. I don't know. This is how I get to shiny. How you get to shiny is up to you. But a lot of cars I work on come out looking really good. That looks really good. Okay, let's throw the old detailometer back in that one spot. Let me turn it on. It's a cool little tool. My friend Daryl K sent this to me to experiment with. Okay, now the finished results are actually going to be more clear and more distinct when I put the coating on. So this is just after polish, but the coating will increase clarity, especially our paint coating builder. It'll increase clarity. The coating will make it very glassy. So here's my tape lines. That's what those are there, in case you're wondering. I'm gonna set this right here and hit that. Wow, I have the before readings, I think, on video and still shots. But the goal is to get the DOI and the RIQ as close as you can. You can see I got them fairly close. I've increased, I forget what this measurement is. And my haze is absolutely 0. So score, you know, that's good. That's a good reading. So yay. And I know some people say, Mike, can you go back and measure the paint thickness? I can, but you know, it doesn't matter. Nothing I do now is going to affect anything else I do to the rest of the car, but just for fun, let's see. The only way this really helps is if you take precise measurements and mark every place you put it and then document it. And I know some guys do that, but you know how much time you'll add to the process? a ton of time. That's why I consider these a go, no-go, or big picture indicator. They let me know if I got thin paint or thick paint, and then it's up to me to use good pads, good products, the right tool, and good technique, and sometimes just cross your fingers. Hey, thank you for watching this video. I have to say this is the first time I've worn a head cam, so there's a little bit of a learning curve to that. And I learned a few things to make it better, so the things I'm talking about kind of stay in the middle of the camera lens there. I'll implement that starting today. But real quickly, just to recap, this video was basically to show a person that's never done this before, a newbie or a do-it-yourselfer, how to wet sand by hand, and then you know, using Nikken sandpapers. We're showing the Nikken sandpaper 2000 grit in this case. How to correctly use a rotary polisher to pull out your sanding marks. How to refine the results using foam pads on orbitals. How to use the Dr. Beasley's NSP primers. We also took a look at the paint coating thickness gauge, the detailometer. Here's an orange to explain what orange peel looks like. Also went over using micro tools to do edge work. And just real quickly, kind of let's take a look at the after results. So the goal was to remove the orange peel across the top of this fender so it'll match the fresh paint over here, and I think you can see we did that. I know a bunch of people saw me buffing up here. Real close look, I did not burn through any edge, no edges, none of the raised body lines, none of these lines. And if I come over here and show you the pads, look, there's no red paint, no red paint, no red paint, and no red paint. And that is the goal, when, as I like to say, when you're sanding some other dude's muscle car. You want to get the job done, but you don't want to make any mistakes. So I think we accomplished that today. We do teach these classes here at Dr. Beasley's in Stuart and also in Chicago. And real quickly, I teach a one-day class and a two-day class. And let me just show you what they look like. This is the one-day class. So I cover 3 primary topics: high-end detailing, or multiple step or show car detailing, however you want to call it, a mid-range package, and then a budget package. And this car here is a 1977 Pontiac. This was actually here for the class, and this was the budget detail. And just look how nice it came out. And that was using one step, is actually Dr. Beasley's Z1. So there's one of the cars left over. And while I don't really have a formal PowerPoint, let me just show you. I think there's 6 slides in here. So the first slide just shows the class, what they're going to learn the first day. Then the next slide actually shows the car they're working on, and it lists all the tools, pads, and products. And a lot of people like to come up and take a picture so they don't got to remember what they did to that specific car. But on this car here, if you look right here, we started out in the morning using a rotary polisher. So the first tool you learn to use, the first thing in the morning on the first day, is the rotary, okay? Because I believe people need to know how to use that, because there's an old saying goes like this: use the right tool for the job. Well, sometimes the right tool for the job is a rotary. So when you take my class, I want you to have confidence to know how to use it and know when to use it. And then, of course, we build on that rotary polisher throughout the rest of the first day. And if you take the 2 days, then, of course, the 2-day. So that's the second slide. Here's the third slide. This is another car that was here at our recent July 12th one-day detailing class. And again, I listed the products, the tools, the pads. And again, people take a picture of this, so they don't got to remember. And then there's that car. This was our budget detail, one-step ceramic AIO using Dr. Beasley's NSP Z1. And then this class also included topical glass polishing, wet wash engine detail. That's a traditional detail with the degreasers, brushers, and running water. And then I brought in my neighbor's Ford Escape because the headlights were so bad. I showed the fastest way to sand down and buff out and restore headlights. I do that in all my classes. So the first day is very, very intense. The second day, I bring in cool cars like this and teach you how to sand them down. And again, then you get to reinforce the skills you learned the first day with Rotary, orbital, and ceramic coatings and all that stuff. They start early at 7:30. They go till about 5:30. There's literally no chairs. There's no boring long PowerPoint. What I do is I do a demonstration for the class for whatever the topic or the technique is. I show them how to use the tool. Then I turn them loose on the car. So a lot of people think these classes are really fun. If you would like to get signed up and attend one of these classes, you just need to go to drbeasleys.com. On the top of the webpage, look for a text link that says classes and click on it. And then scroll to the bottom and you will see the dates for upcoming classes and get signed up. Our business model for our classes are basically $595 a day, so $600 a day, so a 2-day class is $1,200. It's not bad. And when you sign up for a class, I send you an email. I've already done the legwork for you. I send you an email. It lists all the airports, the exact airport code, how far they are from Stuart. I also include all the local hotels. So I've done all the work for you to make it easy for you to travel here and stay here. And of course, I always like to make my personal cell phone available. If you got any questions, say you're detailing a car like this or a new Honda and you got some questions, shoot me a text, give me a call. Try not to do it after 6 p.m. at night because I do turn my phone off at that point. But that cell phone number is 760-515-0444. And I hope to see you at a future detailing class.